Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bridges. Buckner. Coleman. Coleman. Cook. Quorum. Danielson. Donovan. Denberg. Fields. Gardner. Gonzalez. Hanson. Heisey. Holbert. Hawkins Lewis. Kirkmeyer. Colker. Lee. Liston. Lundeen. Moreno. Pedersen. Priola. Rankin. Rodriguez. Scott. Simpson. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Story. Winter. Woodward. Zenzinger. Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 35 present, 0 absent, and 0 excused. We have a quorum. Would the good senator from Alamosa please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good morning, colleagues. If you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Senator Buckner.
Mr. President, I move that the reading of the Journal of Monday, April 26, 2021 be dispensed with and that the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Senate Services.
April 27th, correctly printed Senate Bills 250, correctly re-enrolled Senate Bills 22, 29, 35, 39, 101, 166, 201, 247, correctly revised House Bills 1095, 1108, 1112, 1188, 1207, 1220, correctly re-revised House Bills 1009, 1013, 1136, 1044, correctly enrolled Senate Bills 93, 97, 99, 139, 192, 195, and SJR 17.
Committee reports.
April 26th, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the merits of committee recommends the following. House Bill 1167 be referred to Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation. April 26th, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the merits of committee recommends the following. House Bill 1241 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation. Recommendation placed on the consent calendar. April 26th, Committee on Health and Human Services, after consideration of the merits of committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 239 be amended as follows. So amended be referred to Committee on Appropriations, favorable recommendation. April 26th, Committee on Health and Human Services, after consideration of the merits of committee recommends the following. House Bill 1122 be amended as follows. So amended be referred to Committee on Appropriations, favorable recommendation. April 26, Mr. President, the Committee on Health and Human Services had in consideration had a hearing. The following appointments recommends appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the State Board of Human Services for term expiring March 1st, 2025. Brisa Chavez of Rifle, Colorado, serve as a public member appointed. Michael Ronald Dave of Denver, Colorado, serve as a public member appointed. Lindsay Lee Reeves of Pueblo, Colorado, serve as a public member and family member of a person who has a disability appointed. Desta Meclate Chanel of Denver, Colorado, serve as a public member reappointed.
Message from the House.
April 27, Mr. President, the Speaker has appointed Representatives Benavides, Chair, Kipp, and Williams as House Conferees and First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 77. The Speaker has appointed Representatives Duran, Chair, Froelich, and Pelton as House Conferees and the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 135.
Third reading of bills, final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1095?
House Bill 1095 by Representative Baisley and Kipp and Senators Janal and Woodward concerning excavation notification requirements for underground facility location in connection with county road maintenance.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, to kick things off today, I request permission to make a third reading amendment.
Would the good senator from Loveland please tell us why the body should allow you permission to offer a third reading amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. In our hurry to make things right yesterday and delaying the effective date, the bill drafter caught something that my colleague and I did not catch, and that is when you change the effective date, you also need to change the petition date. So Section 2 will change as well. So I'd ask permission for this technical amendment.
The question before the body is to allow the good senator from Loveland to offer a request for permission to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and permission is granted. Will the clerk please, there is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L010?
Amendment L010 to House Bill 1095.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move L010.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you can't recall the conversation we had 60 seconds ago, this bill changes the effective date within the petition clause.
Is there further discussion regarding Amendment L010? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L010. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment L010 is adopted. To the bill. Senator. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1095 as amended on third and final passage. Ask for your yes vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1095 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Gardner, Liston, Lundin, Hawkes Lewis, Story, Donovan, Sonnenberg, Scott, Priola, Rankin, Zenzinger, with a vote of 24 ayes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1095 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Simpson, Cook, Minority Leader Smallwood, Kirkmeyer. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1112?
House Bill 1112 by Representatives Snyder and Bradfield and Senators Lee and Heisey concerning authorization for school districts to establish a scholarship program for school district graduates using the school district's locally received money.
Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1112 on third and final reading and urge an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in support of House Bill 1112. In the education policy space, frequently you will hear money talked about as if it's the solution, as if it's the answer. The reality is money is rarely, if ever, a solution in the education policy space. In this particular instance, we have significant leadership that has been demonstrated by the community colleges down in El Paso County and some of the local school districts down in El Paso County. Leadership is consistently, provably, the best answer for good results in the education policy space. This bill follows in behind that demonstrated leadership and says we have a program that's been created out of whole cloth, out of thin air, serving students brilliantly, and now we would like to add some support to that. So I rise in support, even though there's discomfort for me in elements of the precedent-setting nature of the policy inherent in this bill. I rise in support simply because it's one of those moments where we get it right. Leadership shows up first, and money follows in behind. And so I rise in support of the bill for those reasons, and urge your support as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to come down and say anything about this bill. We had a robust discussion in committee. I will be a yes today, but I want to flag a potential concern on this bill that we will come back to address if it happens. We're allowing school districts to take mill levy override money and create college scholarships from that money. To me, the concern is that this could, in the long term, dramatically advantage wealthy districts in this state. Hey, one of the bonuses of going to a school in a wealthy district is you get your college paid for too. We have one of the highest achievement gaps in the entire country. The difference between folks who come into school with high incomes and low incomes and where they come out on the other side is one of the greatest gaps in the country. I have concerns that this bill will create a continuation of those gaps into higher education, but this bill comes from a district that is low income and wants to make sure that their kids have a chance to succeed the same as those kids coming from high income districts. So because of where this bill is coming from, the intent behind it, and what I hope the results of it will be, I will be a yes today, but I do want to put that marker in the ground that if this comes back and it increases those achievement gaps, I will come back here to fix that problem.
Senator Rankin.
Well, I am not going to vote against this bill, but I do want to echo the previous senator's comments. If you look at school funding formulas, across, particularly in Colorado, but really in many other states, the biggest contributor to inequity, to differences between rich and poor kids, is the use of property taxes. Property taxes are in almost every state skewed toward local control, which is, right, a good thing. We have currently local mill levy overrides in Colorado are $1.5 billion. And think about the idea of asset value per pupil. If you pass one mill in a district that has high asset value per pupil, you will raise more money per pupil. And so in Colorado, what's happened is as we had the negative factor grow, local districts have in many cases replaced the negative factor with local mill levy overrides. $1.5 billion. Terribly, unfairly skewed toward rich districts. We already have major distortion. Far be it from me to vote against local folks raising money for local scholarships. I would never do that. But I want to just use this opportunity to tell you that our biggest problem, and that of other states, in the inequity in our school funding formula is the way we use local property taxes. We need to fix that. We need to fix it in our school finance formula. This will, in fact, make the gap bigger because rich districts will be able to provide scholarships to their kids. Not a bad thing, just creates more of a gap. And I wanted to use the opportunity to talk to you about that because I want this to come back when we talk about school finance this year.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to weigh in. No arguments that our mill levy override system does exacerbate inequities. However, that is not what this bill is. That is something that already exists. That is already out there. And this bill does not drive those inequities. In fact, the aim of this bill is to close those gaps. This is for promise scholarships. If we are going to have our low-income students involved in concurrent enrollment programs, we want that investment in concurrent enrollment to mean something. If they can't take the next step, then they've just earned credits that do them zero good. Because we want them to be able to carry that forward into their post-secondary educational options. And oh, by the way, this is local control at its height. No existing dollars can be used for this. They have to go back to their voters and they have to ask permission. And if the local district doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it. They can vote it down. At every step, these are not state dollars, these are local dollars. And the law right now is actually silent on this, so they could have actually gone forward and done it. But instead, they decided to clarify just to make sure that they would have permission to do it, and it's a fantastic program. The district that is asking to do this has one of the most diverse populations in the state, and they have an exceptionally high number of Pell eligible kids. And these are for Promise scholarships. The Promise Scholarship Program is one of the most successful scholarship models that we have in the country because it really helps with those last dollar in. So for all those reasons and more, I highly encourage you to vote yes on this bill.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. An example of strong agreement from both sides of the aisle in honor of local control. I share a perspective with my friend from Greenwood Village. This isn't a request, a bill that came from wealthy districts, a wealthy district or wealthy districts, but rather the opposite. And I was reminded as he was speaking of an email I received this morning from a constituent in Highlands Ranch, and she very much wanted her representative, Van Winkle, and I to override our school board and modify their policy about graduation attendance this year because of COVID. She was frustrated that only one person from their family could attend for that student. And my response was a 145-year perspective on local control. She may have moved here from a state where a state legislator could weigh in, but I explained that the 7 members of the Douglas County Board of Education had 100% control over their policy regarding attending graduation, and that her state representative and her state senator have 0% authority over those decisions. And I look at 1112, House Bill 1112, and that's what I see. I asked our ranking member from education where he was before the debate started, just to make sure, and I agree with him. This is a matter of local control. We don't decide how much teachers are paid. We don't decide who can attend or high school graduations, and we shouldn't presume to decide what a local district can do with local funds. As for the thorough and uniform funding required in our state constitution, that's always going to be a frustrating reality for those who serve in this chamber and the one opposite. We can't really achieve that. We have to work together with 178 school districts, each with its own locally elected school board, to figure out what thorough and uniform actually means. And to my good friend from Carbondale, I understand his frustration, but we tend to see these things slightly different. I would want to honor local control, and if the people of a local district decide to approve a bond and mill override, probably the local school board should have the most authority, or the only authority, to decide how those monies are spent. For those reasons, I'll be a yes vote, and just appreciate the bipartisan dialogue, the bipartisan support that the bill has. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, thanks to my co-sponsor from El Paso County. This bill, as you may have heard, arose out of discussions with the leadership of Pikes Peak Community College, who had a Promise Scholarship program going on for a couple of years. And it was so successful in terms of getting first-gen people into college that he approached Senator Heisey and the other senator from El Paso County and myself to bring this bill because there was some uncertainty in state law as to whether it was some provisions seemed to authorize it, some provisions seemed to not authorize it. They wanted to make it crystal clear so that local school boards would have a clear path going forward that this was an authorized program for them to do. In the first 2 years of the program, between Harrison, which was pointed out as one of the most diverse school districts certainly in El Paso County and maybe statewide. 78 kids who would not have gone to college went to Pikes Peak Community College. The second year, the COVID year, 138 kids went to college. This is extraordinary accomplishment for a local program if you believe, as I do, that the education is the key to a democratic society and a functioning democracy. Movement of kids from high school into higher education should be one of our highest goals, and this bill demonstrates local leadership in furthering that goal. So I thank all of our colleagues who have spoken in support of this bill and urge an aye vote.
Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. When Dr. Bolton was explaining this bill to me, he was saying what is really powerful is to walk into a classroom and tell the kids, if you want to go to college, I can put you in college. I can get you your degree. I can get you your certificate, whatever your goal is. It wasn't a matter of, we think we can do it, come talk to us, we'll see if you qualify. He said it's just really powerful to be able to say, we can do it. If you want to go, we can get you there. I renew my motion.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1112 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1112 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Fields, Buckner, Winter, Kolker, Kirkmeyer, Simpson, Moreno, Danielson, Zenzinger, Minority Leader, Lundin, Priola, Smallwood, Janal, Patterson, Story, Cook. Please add the President. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1220?
House Bill 1220 by Representative Froelich and Senator Fields concerning implementing recommendations of the Colorado Child Support Commission.
Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1220 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. We really need to raise these microphones. Doesn't move. I have so many important things to say today. So colleagues, I was a no voting committee on this bill, and I just want to take a couple of minutes to let you know why I'm actually going to be a yes vote on this bill. I want to thank the sponsor for listening to the great conversation that we had and taking action on that, because she probably didn't need to do that. So one of the things that I was most concerned about in this bill, there are two things actually. One was the fact that we're now for the first time asking businesses in our state to do reporting on their 1099 employees, on their contract laborers. And I was concerned, and I think that was shared by at least one other member of the Health Committee, as to what that might look like. A lot of us hire a lot of people in business, and they come and they go, and we pay them a few $100 here, and to do all of that reporting sounded like it was going to be really onerous for businesses, particularly small businesses across our state. So I feel like the amendment that the sponsor agreed to and was willing to put on this helped clarify some of that, because now in my opinion, what the bill says is very clear. If you're going to be sending somebody a W-2 or a 1099, you need to send that data to the state so that they can make sure that people that owe child support are paying their child support. And I really like what the sponsor said in committee, because I agree with her completely, is this an additional burden on business? And the answer is yes, it is an additional burden on business for them to now, for the first time, go into their 1099 contract laborers
and send that information to the state is an additional burden. But where I completely agree is it worth that additional burden? And the answer was yes. That if there are people out there that are evading child support by simply going into the gig economy, so to speak, and making sure that they're never employed someplace that provides them a W-2 expressly so that they can avoid the child support payments that they owe, doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel fair to the kids that need that money, to the families that need that money. So I appreciate the sponsor bringing the bill. I'm going to be a yes on House Bill 1220. And again, want to thank my colleague from Aurora.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank the good senator from Douglas County for the spirited debate that we had in health as it relates to this bill. Basically, this bill is all about the calculation and the enforcement of child support. And when you think about the burden that might put on a business, just think about what it's like to raise a family and the relationship has fallen apart and you're not getting the support to raise your kids. Basically what this bill does, it creates definition as it relates to the child and parent relationship, as it relates in the Children Code. And what we do in the state of Colorado, we try to make sure that whoever has to pay child support is able to deliver. Sometimes it could be too much, and sometimes it could be not enough. But what the state of Colorado has done is try to engage parents to make sure that they do something to help support their children. So members, I do urge an aye vote on this House Bill 1220.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1220 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1220 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Kirkmeyer, Winter, Buckner, Gonzalez, Story, Rankin, Priola, Pedersen, Lee, Janal, Smallwood, Hawkes Lewis, Hanson, Bridges. Please have the President. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1108?
House Bill 1108 by Representative Escar and Senator Moreno, concerning updates to prohibitions against gender-based discrimination to clarify the individuals who are included in a protected class.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1108 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1108 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Cook, Scott, Sonnenberg, Woodward, the Minority Leader, Lundin, Liston, Gardner, Kirkmeyer, Heisey, Smallwood. With 24 aye votes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1108 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Zenzinger, Gonzalez, Hawkes Lewis, Janal, Buckner, Pedersen, Hanson, the Majority Leader, Bridges, Kolker, Danielson, Lee, Story, Fields. Please have the President. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1188?
House Bill 1188 by Representatives Kennedy and Senators Gonzalez, concerning additional liability of a defendant who admits liability under Responding Superior.
Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Presidente. I move House Bill 21-1188 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1188 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Sonnenberg, Gardner, Smallwood, Heisey, Scott, Rankin, Priola, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Lundin, Cook, Woodward, Corum, Simpson. With 20 aye votes, 15 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1188 is passed. Co-sponsors. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1207?
House Bill 1207 by Representative Daughtry and Benavides and Senators Lee and Fields concerning the overpayment of workers' compensation benefits.
Senator Lee.
Mr. President, I request leave to offer a third reading amendment to House Bill 1207.
Will the good senator from Colorado Springs District 11 please tell us why this body should allow you permission to offer a third reading amendment?
With apologies, Mr. President, I made a mistake yesterday. I had the clarifying amendment L009, but I didn't deliver it to the clerk before I moved the bill, and then the vote was called before I could do so. It was my error. The amendment is an important clarifying one that's agreeable to stakeholders. I respectfully request leave to offer it on thirds.
The good senator is calling into question the committee of the chair in doubt. The motion before the body is to grant permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Debatable motion?
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was my bad. Apologies, everyone.
Thank you.
The question before the body is to allow permission to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and permission is granted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L009?
Amendment L009 to House Bill 1207 by Senator Lee. Amend reading gross of bill, page 2, line 3, strike or page 2 after line 13, insert 3 is paid in error or inadvertently in excess of an admission.
Senator Lee.
Mr. President, I move L009. This amendment adds language to enable a state insurance carrier to seek repayment of an amount that is paid in error or in excess of an admission in order that of an order that exists at the time the benefit is paid. So this is the ultimate technical amendment clarifying language. Although we felt the language in the bill already covered repayment of these errors, this language makes it perfectly clear that that is the case. So we ask for an aye vote on 009.
Is there any discussion regarding Amendment L009? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of this amendment. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment L009 is adopted. To the bill, Senator. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, basically what this bill does is updates the Workmen's Compensation Act to clarify when an overpayment occurs. When you think about workmen's compensation, it kind of protects workers, because when you go to work, no one wants to be injured, but when you do, there's a process in place federally and within our state to compensate, to try to make someone whole, to get them back to work. So members, I do urge an aye vote on this bill, House Bill 1207.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1207 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Smallwood, Cook, Liston, the Minority Leader, Gardner, Lundin, Priola, Corum, Rankin, Kirkmeyer, Heisey, Scott, Simpson, Sonnenberg, Woodward. With 20 aye votes, 15 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1207 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Danielson, Colker. Story. Please have the president. Second reading of bills, consent calendar, general orders. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have, and the motion is adopted. And the Senate will resolve itself to the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar, and Senator Danielson will take the chair.
Committee will come to order. And the court rule is relaxed for everyone in the chamber. Mr. Majority Leader. Will the clerk please read the title of all the bills on the general orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar?
House Bill 1143 by Representative Froelich and Soper and Senator Danielson concerning forensic medical evidence of sexual assault. House Bill 1223 by Representative McLaughlin and Soper and Senator Story and Coram concerning the creation of an outdoor recreational industry office in the Office of Economic Development.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for the adoption of all the bills on the consent calendar, which includes House Bills 1143 and 1223.
Is there any discussion of any of the bills on the consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of all the bills on the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the bills are adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, the Committee of the Whole begs leave to report has had in consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1143 and 1223 passed on second reading and order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1143, House Bill 1223 passed on second reading, order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself to the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Danielson will take the chair.
The committee will come to order, and the court rule is relaxed for everyone in the chamber. Mr. Panetta, please read the title to House Bill 1090.
House Bill 1090 by Representative Valdez A. and Senator Gonzalez concerning certain criminal marijuana offenses.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1090 on second reading and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1090. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1090 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of House Bill 1055.
House Bill 1055 by Representative Woodrow and Senators Pedersen concerning allowing compensation for a school district board of education be by written resolution.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1055.
And the committee report?
Oh, thank you. Yes, and the committee report. That was an important piece of this.
To the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the committee report, we brought some guardrails around how you can be compensated at a school board level, and it only includes getting a per diem of up to $150 that will change over time in accordance with inflation, and you have to actually, it has to be your specific duties. Your school board will identify what those duties entail and what you can be compensated for. It can only be up to 5 days per week and excludes federal holidays. And I ask for your support.
Is there further discussion on the Education Committee report? Senator?
Not on the committee.
Senator Winter.
Sorry, not on the committee report.
The question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Senator Pedersen, to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All this bill does is it moves this decision to our local school boards to decide whether or not they're serving members in the future. They can't vote for their own compensation, but we did change actually in the committee report. I know we already passed that, but that they can vote to decrease their per diem rate, which is important. We know we need flexibility when it comes to the recession and the pandemic that we experienced. We did all vote to reduce our pay, and we need to make sure that they are able to do that. So nobody would be able to actually vote for their own per diem rate. It would be for the next term. And what this does is it makes sure that we're lowering the barriers for people who want to serve, who are unable to because of the time commitment involved and the amount of money that it costs to their business, in their personal life, and time away from their family. And so if we want the people who are serving, not just, well, on our school boards, to reflect more of the Colorado population and not people who are retired or independently wealthy, we need to make sure that we're doing the bare minimum, which is what this bill does, and I ask for your support.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of 1055 because our democracy works best when we have a diversity of views and opinions and backgrounds at the table. And so much of what inhibits people from running for office and being able to share their diversity of views and backgrounds is compensation. And this is real work, it's hard work, and I encourage a yes vote on 1055.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I rise to speak against the bill, not so much in opposition to the bill, but to talk through some of the philosophical concerns I have. It seems that in our society today, we are creating step by step, inch by inch, an increasingly robust political class. The spirit of voluntarism, which I think, quite frankly, is exactly what local school boards are about, is in an insidious, maybe that's too strong of a word, maybe in an unintended way, under assault. I think, and I have said for years, 4 years on the House Education Committee, 4 years on the State Board of Education prior to that, now 3 years on the Senate Education Committee, every time a member of a local school board comes before those committees, I call out to them that in my mind, they are the heroes of electoral politics in Colorado, because they raise their hand and say, I volunteer. I participate in my community in this meaningful way by giving of myself sacrificially to my community. And so that is the core, the ethos, the basis of voluntarism. This bill seeks to make it easier for people to volunteer, but at the same time, it continues to expand, I believe, this idea of a professional political class, which I think is antithetical to who we really are as a nation, as a country. There are so many movements, so many efforts where we increasingly are trying to make larger in some ways what may be the new aristocracy, and that is the political ruling class of America. And this is at the foundation of that pyramid, if you will, but I think it eats at that principle of voluntarism. So I rise not so much to oppose the bill, but to oppose the loss that this bill feeds into, I believe, of the spirit of voluntarism in electoral politics and society today. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your attention.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Serving an elected office is the ethos of volunteerism. And for some people, that's easier. If you are retired, if you're independently wealthy, if you're a real estate agent, if you are a lawyer, maybe a small country lawyer, it's easier to work part-time. The hardest part of my job is actually figuring out how to earn money when I'm not here or when I am here. And spend my time doing this. I have spent the better part of 2 decades recruiting diverse people to run for office, recruiting women and young folks and people of color and GLBTQ folks. And you know what their first question is? How can I have a job and do this? And whether you're serving on school board or in the state senate, that remains a barrier. And if we want a democracy that is truly representative, we have to break down barriers. That means that it's not just easy if you are privileged and have income and a flexible job. Because a lot of people don't have a flexible job. They clock in and they clock out, and they have to put in when they're there and when they're not, and they don't get to say, hey, every Tuesday night, I want to serve on my school board, and I want to spend hours and hours and hours doing that, and I can't work my shift that night. There's a lot of people that can't do that. This is a very, very small step towards making democracy more accessible, and we need to make sure that we are allowing a diversity of views to hold positions of power, including on our school boards.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess it's Attack Lawyers Day. Like my colleague from Monument, I'm not particularly opposed. I will be a no, but it is a fact that everyone who runs for public office does so sacrificially. It's not simply, well, if you're a lawyer, you can do this, and I feel compelled to respond to this, that if you're a lawyer, you can do this. Even as I stand here today, the financial sacrifice for lawyers, realtors, accountants, others who might have an independent practice is phenomenally larger than anything that might be paid. And the same is true in varying degrees for my colleagues who serve on school boards around the state. But here's the dilemma with this, and perhaps the sponsors over the long haul are correct, or perhaps not. As an example, and I speak beyond school boards because it is sort of in principle what this bill is about, though. In Colorado Springs, we pay our city council members $6,000 a year. School board members serving and spending as much time as they do earn nothing. and do so as a labor of, I don't think I overstate to say, a labor of love, of care for their children, care for their community. It is what they do. And not everyone can, that's true. I suspect even if it paid $6,000 a year, it still wouldn't matter, because what I hear from members of the Colorado Springs City Council about their $6,000 and their 2 meetings a week or every 2 weeks and their utility board meeting that goes with that, and I know that for school districts it is very much the same. It's like, you know, don't insult me. So if it's, you know, if it's $6,000, doesn't matter. Maybe 20 will matter. Maybe 30 will matter. Maybe what happens is I need to be so hands-on for the school district. I want to be immersed. And that will take all my time, and I'm, you know, I'm a business person. I'm a school teacher that can no longer serve in that capacity or take the time. So we want to give everyone, we want to make sure we don't cut anyone out. Maybe we should do like Colorado counties, large counties. Maybe the entire package should be on the order of $130,000 a year. Wonder why the most common job for former legislators in Colorado is county commissioner. Or you might doubt the sanity of someone who had that kind of salary who comes to the legislature to make $40,000 a year, and in some cases not even sleep in their own bed at night, Monday through Friday. My point is, this is not an easy public policy choice, and it may be one of the most momentous that we make. Sure, I think the sponsors make a good argument. I've certainly thought through that one. I've compared the pay for county commissioners that we do in Colorado for our larger counties. The smaller counties would say that, you know, we're kind of more in the class of Colorado Springs City Council. It's not that much compared to what I need to make. But because I live in a class whatever county, we can't pay that much more. I have a personal predilection about this, and I say no one should hold the job of legislator if this is the most money you've ever made in your life. But that's just kind of a personal.
Thanks, Senator Gardner. If we could just.
Well, I'm to the bill, Madam Chair. I'm to the bill. The bill is about, do we pay people for public service, in this case, school district.
School districts, Senator Gardner, let's bring it on back. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will proceed. So, what will districts do? Well, Right now, school boards in Colorado are unpaid. That is pretty much the rule, I think, in most states of the country, at least with which I'm familiar. And people will sacrifice, and some people will not be able to run, and some people will, and it won't just be those who have a job that punches a clock. It will be lawyers, business people, bankers. I've never heard a school board member who hasn't said, it's $40,000 or $50,000 a year loss to me in time. Not whining, just saying, if you're going to do this, that is going to be what it is. Even if I'm retired and my pension's going to come in, the other lost opportunities are such that it is a sacrifice. But at what level? At what level then are we going to do it? And then what do those campaigns for school board look like? Our school district is hard pressed for funds. Our school district is hard pressed for the payment of classroom teachers. Why are school board members being paid $20,000 a year? So there's 5 of them or 7. That's $100,000 that could go to classrooms. That's just what that campaign looks like. Well, let's not make it that much then, because we don't want that. So let's make it, what, $2,000 a year, $2,500 a year? Okay, well, you're back to the other end of the problem. Philosophically, members, this matters. I'm not against the idea of empowering people to run for school board. I have to tell you, I have at least one district. No, I'm going to tell you, I have 2 districts in my Senate district, probably more, but that come to mind that have difficulty finding candidates for school board. One of them is the most economically challenged districts, and the other is arguably one of the wealthiest districts in the state, not perhaps in the income of the PPR and so forth, but in terms of the people that live there. Isn't that curious? It's not a problem. It's not a problem simply of finding good candidates for school board because, oh, that district socioeconomically is very challenged, so it's very hard to find people. Oh, guess what? Over here in a district that has a very, very high median income, it still has the problem. Vote for it, vote against it. I think one of the, and you can't see my face, so you don't know. So my tongue's way up in my cheek. One of the fun things will be to watch school boards decide whether to pay themselves or not. That'll be fun. Turn that into a campaign issue. Members, it just isn't that easy. and I appreciate you listening to me. You may think that this is not a very big deal. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal for what we think of in terms of public service. And because I think this will change the entire tenor, as my colleague from Monument talked about with respect to a political class, I think it will not be a good policy for the state of Colorado or for education in Colorado or for communities in Colorado. I ask for a no vote.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good senator from El Paso County said, I don't want you to legislate if this is the most money you've ever made. And I want to strongly disagree with that. During COVID, we've actually made a lot of policies that affected frontline workers. Frontline workers make $15 an hour. And I actually wish we had a frontline worker in this chamber right now to help us set those policies. And if we had a frontline worker in this chamber, they'd be making more money than they've ever made. And that voice isn't heard from this chamber. Earlier this year, we had a discussion on renters' rights, and we're asked how many people in this chamber actually rent. And no one did. And so I hope that, as the last speaker said, this changes the tenor of democracy. Because I actually want that single mom that makes $15 an hour to think she belongs on the school board. Because who should be on the school board? The single mom that relies on the food that's provided to her children, the single mom that relies on the education and the before school and after school care, and that is exactly why we are running this bill. So the city council might make $6,000 a year. Let's say you're a single mom that wants to be on city council because you want that voice represented, and you need to pay for childcare, and you pay your childcare person $20 an hour. That's only 5 hours a week. I was the first woman on city council in Westminster to have children while serving. And I had another income and a supportive spouse, and it was hard for me. To make sure we have a diversity of views at the table, we need to make it economically accessible. This isn't saying you're suddenly going to change your economic status for serving on school board. We're saying maybe you can pay for your child care. Maybe you can pay for the gas to get to the school board meeting. People are not going to run to earn this money. They are going to run because they can actually pay their childcare now. And if you haven't sat down with anyone and tried to recruit them to run for office and talked about the emotional toll it will take on them, the financial toll it will take on them, and look them in the eyes and tell them that their voice is worth it and the sacrifice is worth it, but maybe I just want you to be able to pay your childcare. That's what this bill's doing, and I hope it changes the tenor. I hope it changes it so that that single mom knows that she belongs in a seat of power on her school board to make decisions for her own children and can afford to do that now.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A couple of thoughts, several different thoughts. This particular bill we're debating right now, 1055, allowing compensation on school districts, has a companion also on the Second Amendment or the second reading calendar, 244, that's about expanding health benefits to an emerging political portion of the political class aides. The folks who work inside this building have obvious political interests, developing political expertise and so forth. So to this theme of a permanent and expanding political class, I would suggest our second reading calendar speaks to that very issue in a couple of substantial elements. It doesn't just say, here's some ideas. It says, we want to put in the law an expansion, codification, definition of this expanding and permanent political class. Now, I serve as a citizen legislator. I like that. It's an incredible honor to, in fact, have the opportunity to be a part of something that was created to say we will take from society for a limited period of time during each year representatives who come from society, who have purchase in society, difference and diversity of experience, life experience, work experience, familial experience, cultural experience. And we will let those citizens, for a limited period of time, speak to what we think the laws of our land should be like. I think walking away from that to create a permanent, I would argue, ultimately aristocratic class to rule over the others is exactly antithetical to what this nation and this experiment known as America is all about. Point one. Point two, you were asked on a recent debate, do you live in a rental property right now? Nobody answered yes. But the question that didn't get asked and should be asked and answered is, have you at some point in your life, as your primary residence, lived in a rental property? All the hands would go up. We're getting an echo of that conversation, that thought in this debate. It was said, if you work at a frontline, if you're a frontline worker, this bill will somehow give you the ability to participate in your society. And those who are not frontline workers couldn't know what it is to be a frontline worker. The question that needs to be asked to clarify that is, has anyone here ever, in their recent memory, in their life experience, been a minimum or sub-minimum wage frontline worker? And the answer is, I think you get 35 hands in the air. Of course. We've all had that experience. Do we have it in this moment? No. But was it formative to us? Did it shape who we are? Did it give us the perspectives that we bring into this chamber? Of course it does. So I think it's important that we not say, look, if we take a snapshot today, if you're not in that circumstance, you couldn't possibly have empathy for, experience with, an acknowledgement of, and the ability to represent that idea. I think that's mistaken. I think that's exactly why I'm pushing back against this bill, 1055. It's about voluntarism, people that bring their experiences to the work that needs to be done on behalf of the public. I think we lose something special. We lose something almost magical. We certainly lose that which, in my opinion, animates the great experiment of America and the exceptionalism that is America if we hand over the authority to govern ourselves to the government and an aristocratic class that is funded and grown over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I would argue it's been growing for decades now already. We need to, as citizens in the circumstance of citizens, continue to represent. And the best way to do that is to not codify further expansion of a governing class of individuals to make the decisions that will be made on our behalf. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share my colleague's perspective that it isn't so much a bill that I want to rail against. I will be a no vote But it's the curiosity, maybe the unintended consequences that will be created by this bill. I've been very involved in several school board elections in my community, and the most common question that I get from constituents when it comes to a school board election is, why aren't the party affiliations printed on the ballot? Well, state statute makes those nonpartisan races. But I see a great opportunity now in a community like mine to have candidates who will run to pledge that, who won't take this per diem, versus candidates who might refuse to answer that question or who would boldly say yes, they would take it. And I think in a community like mine, for a candidate, if this bill were to pass and become law, in a community like mine, a candidate who would stand up and say, no, I would not take money out of the classroom. I will not take money out of the teacher's salary. I will not take money away from the school bus drivers, because whether you are an R or a D, and it's completely okay to tell the voters that, it's just not printed on the ballot because state statute says it shouldn't be. It isn't. But the number one thing that voters in my community want to know is, are you an R or a D? And candidates go out of their way to tell voters that, especially if they have an R by their name. But now, if this bill becomes law, one thing I like about the bill is it does say may, it doesn't say shall, must, but that just opens up the opportunity to have a different conversation. Because voters in a community like mine very often assume that school board members really aren't that powerful. I mentioned earlier on a different bill that I heard from a constituent this morning who wanted her state representative and her state senator to overturn a policy of her school board. And I wrote back explaining the constitutional history since 1876 of local control, and that I had zero control over that policy, and the 7 members of our school board have 100% control over that policy. And that was a learning experience. I'm grateful to that constituent. She wrote back and said thank you. Apparently she didn't know that, but she contacted the 7 members of our school board. Very, very common that people, especially people who have moved here from other states, assume that school board members are something like PTA. They're volunteers, they do good work, but their state legislators decide how much a teacher is paid. Nope, completely opposite. It's the school board. And people who've moved here from a state where such policy is determined more in a centralized top-down control environment, because the constitution of that state's different than the constitution of this state, they learn very quickly, wow, things work differently here in Colorado. So if this bill becomes policy, we'll finally have a new opportunity to go out and explain again to voters in our communities that no, school board members are not the PTA. No offense to the PTA, but school board members are very powerful elected officials. And those who run for school board, they're politicians, like we are. Because they're the policymakers for those districts. There's 178 of those districts here in this state. And they make policy, like the graduation policy I mentioned earlier in Douglas County, 1 family member per student. And families are saying, I don't like that. Wait until those family members find out that there's candidates who are saying, I won't take a per diem, I won't take money out of the teacher's pocket to pay myself. Because that's what it is. Earlier, we debated a policy that would allow those school boards to take some of those dollars and use it for scholarship programs. And I voted yes. Yeah, they can make that decision. And again, I'm not really railing against the bill because I'm passionately going to be a no. I will be a no vote, but it's more for the unintended consequences of the bill, though I see great opportunity. It's an opportunity to explain to voters in the districts that when you compare the total budget of a district like mine which is now in the range of $1 billion a year, that those 7 people who meet in Castle Rock actually, on an individual basis per board member, they actually have more control over dollars than I do. Now, if you use the entire state budget, that would not be true. But if you take out the federal money and the fee dollars and get down to state tax dollars that are in our budget, it's true. The 7 members of the Douglas County Board of Education actually, on an individual basis, have more power, more direct control over dollars that they get to allocate than I do as a state senator. How can that be true? Colorado is a local control state. And if you think that it's good state policy to pass this bill and have those board members pay themselves per diem and take money out of the pockets of classroom teachers, because that's the pot of money they deal with, then I guess you're going to be a yes vote. I'm going to be a no. But I tell you what, if this bill becomes law, get ready. Because folks who see the world like me, we're going to go out of our way to make sure that we have candidates who will pledge to not take this and explain that policy to voters and create differentiation between them and the people who will pay themselves out of the teacher's pocket. Because that's where the money will come from. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Gardner. Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1055. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title to House Bill 1103. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1103 lay over to the bottom of the general order second reading and bills calendar.
Seeing no objection, the motion is to lay over House Bill 1103 to the bottom of today's calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1103 will be laid over at the Majority Leader's request. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of House Bill 1051.
House Bill 1051 by Representatives Geithner and Byrd and Senator Pedersen, concerning publicly available information about applicants for public employment.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1051.
And the Education Committee report, please.
There is no committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one. No committee report. Thank you. Please proceed. Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this bill comes out of a challenge. CU was challenged by the Daily Camera around not posting all of their qualified finalists for president of the university. And the Court of Appeals ended up siding with CU, saying that they didn't have to post their top 3. But they did say that the statute was very confusing and that we needed to clarify this here in the legislature. So this bill clarifies that you only have to post your top finalists if you're intending to offer the position. It does give 2 weeks where that's publicly available before the actually offering the job. You still can post multiple people who also qualified. But the reason why I ended up supporting this bill is because we've heard from across the state around people who are hesitant to apply for these top positions because they want to know that their name is not going to be public unless they are actually the finalist, because they're worried about it actually compromising their current job. So that's ultimately why I agreed to sponsor this bill and why I think it's good policy, and I ask for your support.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this bill simply attempts to clarify. It affects more than just CU. The CCI and the Colorado Municipal League also strongly support this bill. It's just attempting to clarify statutory language that a local public body is not required to announce the 3 final applicants in the hiring of executive position. It does not prohibit a local body from naming more than 1 finalist. It clarifies the law by that the local governments have the discretion to name 1 or more candidates as final for the position. unsuccessful candidates will not be named and their materials will not be made public. It does not change the excuse me, it does not change the requirement that a local government makes public a finalist name. So we ask for an aye vote on 1051. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1051? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1051. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1051 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1160 lay over to the bottom of the general order second reading of bills calendar.
Motion before us is to lay over House Bill 1060 to the bottom of today's second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1160 will be laid over at the Majority Leader's request. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of House Bill 1099.
House Bill 1099 by Representative Ransom and Michelson Janae and Senators Zenzinger and Smallwood concerning authorization to implement best practices for child welfare caseworkers to recognize domestic abuse and in connection therewith addressing domestic abuse as a form of child abuse or neglect and making an appropriation.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1099 on second reading, and I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1099. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1099 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 11 lay over to the bottom of the general order second reading of bills calendar.
The motion before us is to lay over Senate Bill 11 to the bottom of today's second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 11 will be laid over to the bottom of today's second reading calendar. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 94.
Senate Bill 94 by Senators Janal and Winter and Representative Roberts concerning the continuation of State Board of Pharmacy and in connection therewith implementing recommendations contained in the 2020 Sunset Report by Department of Regulatory Agencies and making other changes regarding the practice of professions regulated by the Board.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 94 and the Health and Human Services Committee and the Appropriation Committee reports.
To the Health and Human Services Committee report.
Appropriations Committee report.
Yeah, we do, because we got to change it.
Senator Janal.
Appropriations. Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I did not.
To the Health and Human Services Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Health and Human Services report, there were technical amendments done as requested by Dora to make slight modifications to the introduced bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Health and Human Services Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Health and Human Services report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator Janal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the Appropriations Committee report, but I do have an amendment, Madam Chair.
That's great. Senator Janal will adopt the report, and then you may amend the report.
I ask for the amendment. The Appropriations Committee allotted money for the Department of Corrections, and I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Janal. The question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment to the Appropriations report that I would like to bring forward. I believe I have it. L006.
Right?
6, I believe. L006.
I didn't have this.
There is an amendment at the desk. Thank you. Mr. Panetta, please read Amendment L006.
L006.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What L006 does is it clarifies the DOC is not included in patient counseling requirements, only if needed, and the counseling applies to new medication therapies. Most inmates in this situation would start treatment prior to entering DOC or in a hospital setting where they would require adequate counseling before leaving the hospital. I ask for an aye vote on L006.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L006 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 94 as amended with a favorable recommendation. And this is an important update to our laws, and I encourage you to vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 94? Seeing none, Senator Janal?
Just to add to the good senator from Westminster, that this is just adding licensing with passing a comprehensive exam. Pharmacists are able to make a number of changes to modernize and update the practice for pharmacy and be licensed by DORA. And pharmacists are an extremely important part of our healthcare system, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 94. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 94 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 98.
Senate Bill 98 by Senators Hawkins, Lewis, and Pedersen, Representative Mullica and Rich, concerning the continuation of prescription drug monitoring program and in connection therewith implementing recommendations contained in the 2020 census report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Senator Pedersen.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 98.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L001.
Thank you. There's an amendment at the desk. Mr. Panetta, please read Amendment L001.
Amendment L001 to Senate Bill 98.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L001, what it does is it is a technical amendment that ensures that coroners are able to access the PDMP information, not just with autopsies, but also around a death investigation. So this is really important for trying to evaluate why somebody might have passed. Also, we are repealing, we're amending to take out the repeal of the PDMP. This is an incredibly important structure in our system, and I don't think that it should be up for debate on whether or not it continues. We can always work together to make it better, but I think that we do not need to repeal this in the future.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Amendment L001 is adopted. To the bill, Senator Jaquez Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. We just had a question down here, so I'll make sure that we clarify that. This is a sunset program. It's the prescription drug monitoring program. What we just did on the amendment will make sure that that will not sunset. But the program itself tracks all controlled substance prescriptions in Colorado. It currently covers 45,000 practitioners, including dentists, doctors, nurses, and many different prescribers. So the program itself is about patient safety, and we believe it's a very powerful tool for prescribers to help reduce prescription drug abuse. So we ask for your aye vote on Senate Bill 98.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 98? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 98. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 98 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 103.
Senate Bill 103 by Senator Thunberg and Winter and Representative Escar, concerning the continuation of the Office of Consumer Counsel and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations contained in 2020 census report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies regarding the Office of Consumer Counsel and the Utility Consumers Board.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 103 and the Transportation and Energy Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We made several amendments in the committee. A couple of them were removing a few things from the sunset report that seemed unnecessary, and we added a few pieces, mostly clarifying around the role of the OCC.
Is there further discussion on the Transportation and Energy Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Transportation and Energy Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The OCC is an important office that has saved consumers millions of dollars over the years, and we should continue the OCC.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 103? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 103. All those in favor say aye. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 103 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 126.
Senate Bill 126 by Senator Fields and Representative Michaelson Janae concerning credentialing of physicians as participating physicians in health care plan provider networks.
Senator Fields.
Madam Chair, I move Senate Bill 21126 and the Appropriation Committee report.
And the Health and Human Services Committee report, please.
Yes. Looks like there's two. Is there two reports?
Yes, Senator Fields,
Okay.
if you could just please
So-
move the Health and Human Services Committee report, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or caucus chair.
Madam Chair is just fine. Thank you, Senator Fields.
Basically, in the committee, we made a technical definition change to pharmacists shall notify the individual of available generic brands. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Fields. I think you still actually need to move the committee report.
I didn't move it. I move the committee report and the appropriation report.
Thank you. The question before us is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Health and Human Services Committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report.
The committee or the appropriation? Appropriations. Okay. The appropriation, basically what happened is that we reduced the physical note by a huge margin, so I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. The question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a good bill, Senate Bill 126, because basically what the bill does, it reduces red tape, it reduces administrative burden, and it increases patient access to care and quality outcomes. So I urge an aye vote as we streamline the credentialing for physicians.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 126? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 126. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 126 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 174.
Senate Bill 174 by Senator Cook and Janelle and Representative Burton Carver concerning adoption of written policies by law enforcement agencies for constitutionally required peace officer credibility disclosure notifications.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 174 lay over until May 3rd.
The motion before us is to lay over Senate Bill 174 until May 3rd. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 174 will be laid over until May 3rd. Mr. Panetta, please read the title of Senate Bill 189.
Senate Bill 189 by Senator Donovan and Representative Arndt concerning the funding of Colorado Water Conservation Board projects and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 189 and the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee report.
To the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee report.
I ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Ag report, committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual projects bill that gives us a chance to review the Colorado Water Conservation Board's construction fund and how we will invest those dollars in communities across the state, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 189? Seeing, oh.
Are the committee reports done? Yeah, that's right. Get ready to adopt.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I move L007 to Senate Bill 189.
Mr. Panetta, please read Amendment L007.
Amendment L007 to Senate Bill 189 by Senator Hansen.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I apologize, I got out of order there. I remove L007 to Senate Bill 189.
To the amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Members, since 2002, the General Assembly has provided a pathway for the Water Education Colorado nonprofit to receive support in this bill, in our annual appropriation to water projects. We've carved out this money to support the nonprofit to make sure that we are able to communicate the importance, the severity, the educational component to dealing with our water issues in the state of Colorado. We are a headwater state. We have very complicated water issues. We have severe droughts that we are responding to far too often. And I believe this function needs to be maintained. So since 2002, we've given $150,000 to this effort. Last year that was cut for obvious reasons, as we did cuts all over the budget that we're all very familiar with. This year we restored the vast majority of those, and I believe it's appropriate to restore this effort back to its previous funding level of $150,000. The other great news here is that this state money to support this nonprofit educational work around water education in Colorado has also been able to gather additional support from other nonprofits, and so the state money is leveraged by about 6 or 7 times with additional support to bring their total effort up to over $800,000. So I believe it's appropriate to restore this cut. I think this is a vital part of what we need to do to make sure we're successful with water issues in the state of Colorado. And I urge your support for the restoration of this cut back to its previous level at $150,000.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the title of this bill is Concerning the Funding of Colorado Water Conservation Board Projects. Colorado Water Conservation Board itself, this isn't their project. They left it off the list for a reason. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask for a title ruling, see if this amendment fits underneath that title.
A request for a title ruling has been made. We will stand in senatorial file. The committee will come back to order. The chair rules that Amendment L007 does fit under the title. Senator Sonberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's good news. It has indeed been part of the projects bill, as has a number of amendments that I have prepared of projects bills in the past that we should probably deal with. But here's what I'm going to ask the chamber. Is this more important than the water quality stuff that we cut out of the projects bill? You understand that the Colorado Water Conservation Board sits down, tries to figure out and allocate the amount of money that they have responsibly to do these water projects, to make sure the water is dealt with appropriately. And now, this amendment was brought to the Ag Committee. It was actually defeated in the Ag Committee. So now we have JBC wanting to hijack this and put an amendment on this bill to fund a nonprofit as opposed to funding things that actually need accomplished. If the nonprofit doesn't get this funding, they will still continue their work. This money is not leveraged. It does not utilize this money to force other money to come in to the nonprofit. They still fundraise. And the truth is, if you talk to the original sponsor, well, if you would have talked to the original sponsor before she passed on, the Honorable Diane Hoppy was a representative that started this. I have been in the legislature for 15 years of the 19 years this organization has been moving forward. I've actually served on that board as chair of the Ag Committee, as does my colleague who is the chair now. The question you have to answer is this more important than water quality? Is this more important than your roundtables in each of the 10 different basins that do work? Because that funding was eliminated as well. If we pass this amendment, are we going to actually balance it and take it from somewhere else? That's the question we have to ask. If we have limited resources, and even though it's $150,000, will we remove that from some other place so that we don't throw CWCB out of whack? I'm asking you to respect the Colorado Conservation Board of Directors, respect their suggestions, their recommendations. They are all appointed by the governor to deal with this stuff, and they didn't deem this was a prior priority than some of those other things. That's why it died in the House, died in the Senate Ag Committee. That's why it should die here on the floor. And that's why the Joint Budget Committee should not be pushing this amendment to roll the Colorado Conservation Board. I ask for a no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in support of L007. Having spent an abundance of time as the general manager of the Rio Grande Water Conservation District working with Water Education Colorado, I appreciate the efforts they've undertaken over the last several years in trying to help educate the populace of Colorado, considering how fast this state is growing. It's a real challenge to try to keep people really apprised and educated and understanding where their water comes from and the impacts particularly on agriculture going forward. They publish 3 times a year in the last several years something called the Headwaters Magazine. They do spring, summer, and fall editions that routinely, again, highlight the value of ag and the challenges of infrastructure. Most recently, I was involved with them in crafting their newest Citizens Guide. So they've generated several of these Citizens Guides: Colorado Water Law, Colorado Water Quality Protection, where your water comes from, Colorado Trans-Basin Diversions, really important to me, Colorado Water Heritage, Colorado Interstate Compacts, and really the most recent one where I got to actually participate with them was about Colorado groundwater. They just do really good work. They also really put forward probably the premier leadership program, water leadership class, for the last decade or so, which has really produced some quality leaders going forward. I just think there's real value in supporting WECO, and with all due respect to my good friend and senator from Sterling, it's really not an either-or case. I'm sponsoring legislation, $20 million towards the state water plan that would include funding for the roundtables. There's another $15 million bill to support watershed grant program. I do think this is a wonderful opportunity, and we should continue to support water education in Colorado. Thank you, sir.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to add my support to the good senator from the San Luis Valley. I'm a person who lives in an urban area, but I really understand the necessity and importance of water in Colorado. I would urge all of my colleagues to go down to the Rotunda and look at the poem down there by Thomas Farrell Hornsby, I believe his name is, and the diorama that those pictures that surround the Capitol. There's like 10 or 12 of them describing the importance of water. And I think that poem starts out, "This is the land where water was and is." It talks about the importance of water. There's nothing more important than educating people about the necessity of water in Colorado. $150,000 is not a significant amount of money. I don't think it's an either-or proposition. I think it's really important that we support this board. I've seen the publications that my colleague from the Valley brought out, and they really clarify what water is all about. So I would urge people to support this. The West is where the water was and is. We might switch those words around if we don't educate people about water. Thank you.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, just 2 final points to share with you. One, I wanted to share the legislative mandate for WECO from House Bill 2-1152. To promote a better understanding of water issues through educational opportunities and resources so Colorado citizens will understand water as a limited resource and will make informed water decisions. That's their mission. That's what they've been doing for the last 20 years. I believe we need to continue to support that mission. The final thing I'll say is from the amendment itself. The CWCB, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, is hereby authorized. It is not a shall, it is an authorization to support WECO. The board still maintains that control, which I think is appropriate, and I agree it's not an either or. This needs to be an and situation.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us, Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you. Let me just clarify that. What the amendment says and what will happen is that the Water Conservation Board will take $150,000 out of the fund and direct it to this won't be an option for them. This doesn't give them the option. What this does is says we are transferring this money, and you just need to read it to fill out. The Colorado Water Conservation Board is hereby authorized from the water authorized from the Water Conservation Board Construction Fund to annually provide $150,000 to the foundation. The interesting part is, I'm trying to figure out if this makes it in the statute every year. Do they not already have that authority? And if they had that authority and wanted to do so, why didn't they? Ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetto, will you please read Amendment L003?
Amendment L003 to Senate Bill
Senator
189.
Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move as Amendment L003. Mr. Chair, what this does is just make sure that the fund stays in balance. If we're going to take $150,000 and put it towards the magazine, then we need to deduct it from somewhere else. And so what this does is takes it from the cloud seeding, which actually was increased. The board chose to increase that. So we'll remove that back down so that we remain in balance, make that at $200,000. That would keep the bill in check and in balance. Ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion on L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L003. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetto, will you please read Amendment L006?
L006 to Senate Bill
Senator
189.
Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L006. Members, if we're going to actually do the work we need and we want to fund a magazine, we ought to actually fund the roundtables. We ought to fund those 10 roundtables that have been doing the work in each of the basins. That's what this amendment does, and adds this back to the projects bill, as these type of fundings have done and been in the past. I would ask your support in funding these roundtables, allowing them to do the work that they need to do to meet these water requirements, the water problems that we have throughout the state. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L006. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetta, will you please read Amendment L004?
L004 to Senate Bill 189. By Senator Sonnenberg, amended printed bill, page 4, line 3.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L004. Members, all right, if we're not going to fund the roundtables, we have water quality issues. Water quality issues from burn areas. Now, there's a bill working its way through the process right now that allocates $15 million towards that. We have talked about, and we think it's appropriate to make that $30 million. Here is another $15 million, and what this does is puts $15 million in the projects bill to deal with those water quality issues. And when I talk about water quality issues, you need to understand these are like the areas where we have had burns, the forest fires. As the snow melts, we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with that water quality as it comes down off the side of the mountain. I think that's important. We should think that's important. If we think a magazine is important, surely we think water quality is important. Ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L004. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 189? Senator, yep. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetta, will you please read Amendment L005?
L005 to Senate
Senator
Bill 189.
Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L005. Here's one of the other important things that we lost through the funding. It's the Species Conservation Trust Fund. And what this amounts to is we have to deal with other states in other agreements. We have a fund that allows us to do that so we can keep our water in Colorado. For example, on the South Platte with the sturgeon in Nebraska, this was negotiated several years ago, a number of years ago, by former Commissioner Donna Ment, Commissioner of Agriculture Donna Ment, who still serves on that Tri-States agreement. Members, this is important to keep Colorado's water in Colorado so that we don't have to deliver because of an endangered species. This is another program that was cut. I'm asking you to restore it. Ask for your aye vote on L005.
Is there further discussion on L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L005. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is lost. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 189? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 189. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Mr. Panetta, will you please read will you please read Senate Bill 244?
Senate Bill 244 by Senators Garcia and Van Bergen, Representative Garnett and Escar, concerning funding for permanent part-time legislative aides for members of the General Assembly to allow aides to be eligible to enroll in state health benefit plans pursuant to policy adopted by the Executive Committee of the General Assembly.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 244.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 244? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 244 and ask you to join me in voting against the bill. This bill proposes to amend the legislative appropriation bill by providing benefits to the legislative aides in the legislature and by classifying each one of them as 0.7 of an FTE. The fiscal note on page 2, summary of legislation, describes that this would add 70 FTEs to the legislative branch. That's an enormous expansion of personnel costs. I think others might argue that it isn't actually an expansion of headcount because these folks are here now, but in reclassifying them as 0.7 of an FTE, it's certainly an expansion of cost. There are 4 caucus budgets in the legislative appropriation bill, the legislative budget each year. There's 4 caucus budgets, 2 for the majority caucuses and 2 for the minority caucuses. Having been a part of both the majority and minority budgets in this chamber, I can assure you that the majority budget is larger than the minority budget. One, because there's more members in the majority and fewer in the minority, but there's also administrative costs associated with being in the majority, such as managing the flow of bills, assigning and managing late bill requests and additional bill requests. There are jobs, responsibilities that the majority caucuses must manage that the minority caucus just simply doesn't have. The 2 minority leaders are in charge of the 2 minority budgets. So Leader McKean and I are the members who are in charge of those budgets. We certainly rely heavily on the chief of staff for each of the caucus to help manage those budgets. But one of the things that I find most frustrating about 244 is that it proposes to convert our part-time legislative aides in our caucus, and thank you to the people who serve as legislative aides, especially for our caucus. We are grateful for your hard work. We are grateful to the people of Colorado for paying to have a part-time aide assist each legislator. And we're grateful that that aligns with what the people voted for in 1988, and that was a part-time citizen legislature. So the 100 of us who serve in the General Assembly, we're the only 100 elected officials in Colorado who do not have the authority of our office on a year-round basis. County commissioners do, school board members do, the governor, all other elected officials that I can think of have the power of their office 12 months a year. In 1988, the people of Colorado decided that their state legislators would have the power of office for 4 months a year, 120 days. And then we would go home and we would be citizens just like everybody else. And it's been that way since 1989 because the people voted in 1988 to approve an amendment to our state constitution that made that change. That is why our legislative aides, in my time, 11 years in the legislature, they've been here part-time during the session. And while I've been on the executive committee, first as majority leader and now as minority leader, I have voted, I think every year that I've been on the executive committee, to increase the number of hours per aide that are available. Why? Well, I know from being a member of the General Assembly and having been in leadership that when constituents call the Capitol, when they call their state representative and or their state senator, they almost always assume that they're calling someone who's the equivalent of a member of Congress. They assume that we have a chief of staff in every member's office and a policy director and legislative aides, legislative interns, that we each have a large staff. That is not true. I have, as the minority leader, a staff of 6 full-time partisan staff who work year-round. And we make those 6 people available to the 15 members of our caucus as they have need for policy expertise or JBC, budgeting expertise. They can reach out to those 6 people for help. And when the legislature adjourns sine die, and we're not here for 8 months in a normal year, when we leave in early May, we assign members of our full-time year-round staff to help manage and check voicemail for members and email for members, and we're grateful for their work. And with the expanded number of hours that legislative aides have, we bank hours. We can, if a member doesn't use all of those hours can be used for another member who has used up all of those hours. So right now, I believe that we receive allocation for about 25 hours a week per legislative aide. And I believe in our caucus, we're using about 18, I think, of those hours on average. We look at last year, 18 or 19 of those hours. So as a caucus, we're not using what is already allocated to us. But I've been asked as a member of the executive committee, would I support increasing the total number of hours available? And I've said, yes. I think I've done that every year I've been on the executive committee. But at the same time, I note our caucus isn't using our current allocation. I don't have a legislative aide. I'm the minority leader, so I have a chief of staff and 5 others who work year-round, and one of those 5 does my scheduling, and I'm blessed that I have somebody year-round. So yeah, if I can increase the number of hours provided per member for a legislative aide so that when a constituent calls during those 8 months that we're not here, this is like summer school, or summertime for schools, when we let out sine die each year, we're not here. Legislators may come in for an interim committee meeting. I come in to meet with my staff during the summer, the fall, when we're out of session. But people, constituents, are very often surprised we're not a year-round institution. So to have a legislative aide available to respond to voicemails, answer a phone call if they're there at the time, respond to emails, that's very, very helpful, especially for rural members. The idea back in 1988 was the people said, yeah, you guys come to the Capitol for 4 months a year, 120 days, and then go home and do your jobs. And legislators do. So to have a legislative aide available to make constituent contact, respond to constituent needs, that's a good thing. Do we need to do that by converting them into 0.7 of an FTE? I don't think we do. Again, I've supported increasing the number of hours. Those people are part-time, they're paid an hourly wage. We can bank those hours, share those hours, and we do. But for my caucus, we're not using what we're already allocated. We have room to grow in what's currently allocated, and yet, sure, if you want to increase the number of hours, I could support that again, because I understand that other caucuses use most or all of those hours. But from our caucus, I've asked members, and I know that some members of the caucus that I lead do support the bill, and they're welcome to do that. But as one of the 4 members who manage a budget with my chief of staff, I'm frustrated that this doesn't, my understanding of this would amend the legislative appropriation bill, but it wouldn't allow my chief of staff and I to grow our caucus staff in a way that would meet our objectives, our needs. No, it would dictate to my chief of staff and I that it must grow in this way. It must be each of the legislative aides becomes 0.7 of an FTE with benefits. Does that meet our strategic planning as a caucus? No, that wasn't on our list of things to do. And while I know that some members of the caucus do support the bill, maybe their legislative aides have talked to the member that they work with, but as yet, I've not had one of our legislative aides come to me and say, Minority Leader, we should do this. I haven't heard that. I've heard it from people who don't work for our caucus, but I haven't heard it from our caucus. So I manage a budget that I'm being forced or would be forced to expand if this bill were to become law, didn't ask for that expansion, and could use the funding, our portion of $617,000, I could use our portion of that in more creative ways, ways that the chief of staff and I have discussed. Gosh, if we could do this, if we could hire another person to do X, we could do that. But I don't think that would give me the flexibility to make those decisions. Because I'd have to pay every one of the legislative aides for members who have them as 0.7 of an FTE with benefits. It's also frustrating that some of the best people I've worked with started here as a legislative aide. Our chief of staff being one of them. My first year, the good senator over here from Jefferson County waving her hand. My first year in the House, I had a cubicle over what used to be called the bullpen. Now it's 271, the old state library, beautiful committee hearing room. Back in 2011, that was full of cubicles. And the one that's between me and the front door, Representative Robert Ramirez, I believe, he had a chief of staff, his legislative aide was a guy by the name of Tim Griesmer, who's now our chief of staff. Tim got his start here because those legislative aide jobs are that opportunity. You want to come see if the Capitol is a place you want to work? Maybe you're still in college or right out of college. This is an opportunity to earn some money, interact with members, partisan staff, Legislative Legal Services, Leg Counsel, JBC, State Auditor, the lobby, constituents. It's a way for people to get their foot in the door here. And it complies with the state constitution. I'm not saying that 244 would necessarily be unconstitutional, but it certainly isn't in line with what the people voted for in 1988 when they made us a part-time citizen legislature. And we, at least with our caucus, my opinion is we don't need 244 in order to provide constituent services throughout the year. We've been expanding the hours, and again, I've said it, I think twice before, our caucus isn't using the allocation now, our current allocation. So I will be a no vote on 244. I hope that you will be too. I don't think there's any reason that we need to make our legislative aides 0.7 FTE and pay them benefits. I assume that this would make them para-eligible. Health insurance. I don't understand why a part-time position needs to provide that level of benefits. The federal definition of a part-time employee is well above what we currently pay out as a caucus. We're well below that threshold. So we're converting, with this bill, we would convert that group of people who are working as part-time employees at will. We would convert them as a General Assembly, those who support the bill, you would convert them into full-time employees with benefits for what is a part-time, even seasonal job. I haven't heard a request, a demand from the aides or the members of our caucus. Yes, there are members of our caucus who support this, but I haven't heard an outcry to say, do this. Because I think everyone in our caucus understands we can meet the needs of constituents and members under current allocation, and I ask for a no vote on 244.
The question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 244. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the title to Mr. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we proceed out of order to take up Senate Bill 11.
The motion is to proceed out of order to consider Senate Bill 11. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will proceed out of order. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 11?
Senate Bill 11 by Senator Fields and Representative Mulliken Pelton concerning responsibilities of a pharmacist related to opiate antagonists and in connection with authorizing a pharmacist to prescribe an opiate antagonist and requiring a pharmacist who dispenses opioid to offer to prescribe or dispense an opiate antagonist in certain situations.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 11 and also the committee and the appropriations report.
To the Health and Human Services Committee report, Senator Fields.
Thank you. Members, in the House, in the Health and Human Services Committee, we made some technical changes and we changed prescription to offer. I asked for an aye vote on the committee report from the Health and Human Services.
Is there further discussion on the Health and Human Services Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the Appropriations Committee report, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, in the appropriation, what we did is we provided some language to ensure that hospice and palliative care was included in this bill. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 11 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetta, will you please read Amendment L013?
Amendment L013 to Senate Bill 11.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I move L013 to Senate Bill 11.
To the amendment, Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, a very simple amendment. It simply is requiring the pharmacist to notify the patient or the customer of available generic and brand name opioid antagonists. So fulfilling the mission of the bill, but giving the customer clear choice, especially when in some cases the generic is very appropriate and lower cost. I think this is a good way to address customer cost issues as we look to improve public safety with this bill. Really appreciate working with the sponsor and stakeholders on this. I think this is a nice way to help the customer understand all their choices when they're at the pharmacy. So I urge support of L013.
Senator Hawkins Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to commend the sponsor, the good senator from Aurora, for working with us on this bill. We did have some issues with the bill originally. We had the company that was sponsoring this bill, Emergent Biosolutions, testify in the committee, and there's obviously been some problems with putting the onus of prescribing just on the pharmacist instead of on the prescriber themselves. It would be a much stronger bill if we could do that, but we had this compromise with the amendment, and I believe that this will get us to a point where we'll keep costs down for patients because we will have the generic available. So thank you for this amendment, and I can get to a yes on this bill now.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the good senator from Denver for offering the amendment. I consider it a friendly amendment, and I think it makes the bill better. So I urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L013? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for Senatorial 5.
The committee will stand in Senatorial 5.
Okay. This other bill first.
Mr. Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 11 lay over to the bottom of the general order second reading of bills calendar.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 11. The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 11 to the bottom of the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor, general orders second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will be laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1160.
The motion is to proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1160. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will proceed out of order. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the title to House Bill 1160?
House Bill 1160 by Representative Duran and Soper and Senators Janal and Quorum concerning the care of pet animals and the custody of certain pet animal facilities.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1160 and the Ag Committee report.
To the Agriculture Committee report. Senator Janal.
Thank you. What the Ag Committee report did was it removed language around the placements and definitions that were unclear. In regards to veterinary terms, it requires all pets the basic veterinary and behavioral care for dogs and cats in shelters and rescues, and it requires certificates of veterinary medical inspection for dogs and cats coming from out-of-state shelters. And I do have an amendment to the Ag Committee report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Janal, we will adopt the Ag Committee report, and then we can entertain the amendment. Is there further discussion on the Agriculture Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Agriculture Committee report is adopted. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Panetta, will you please read Amendment L012?
Amendment L012 to House Bill 1160.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. L012 is we finally came to an agreement with all parties that basically takes out the short title in the bill with socially conscious sheltering, and it just leaves the general title, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L012? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L012. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Is there further discussion on the bill? Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the good senator from Fort Collins to work with me on this bill. And I probably should make the announcement that the good senator from Fort Collins and I may
miss the rest of the session because the State Department is calling and asking us to handle peace in the Middle East. And that is basically, this was a lot of negotiation, a lot of working back and forth, and I think we got to where it's probably one of those bills that you're in the right spot because there's something for everyone to like and something for everyone to hate. But I think we're in a good place to ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1160? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the of House Bill 1160. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1160 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the title to House Bill 1103?
House Bill 1103 by Representatives Cutter, McLaughlin, and Senators Pedersen and Quorum concerning implementing the recommendations of the Media Literacy Advisory Committee in Elementary and Secondary Education created pursuant to House Bill 191110.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that House Bill 1103 lay over to the bottom of the General Order Second Reading Bills calendar.
The motion is to lay over House Bill 1103 to the bottom of the second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will be laid over at the request of the Majority Leader. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 11?
Senate Bill 11 by Senators Fields and Representative Mullica and Pelton concerning responsibilities of pharmacists related to opioid antagonists and in connection with authorizing pharmacists to prescribe an opioid antagonist and requiring a pharmacist who dispenses an opioid to offer to prescribe or dispense an opioid antagonist in certain situations.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, before we recessed a little bit, as we were talking about Senate Bill 11, and I think I've already moved it. Do I need to remove it?
Senator Fields, I'm going to need you to remove Senate Bill 11, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to remove Senate Bill 11.
To the bill. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we were talking about an amendment that I asked for an aye vote, and I think we're still at that point. And so, members, before I talk about the bill, I would like to encourage an aye vote on that amendment.
There is an amendment on the desk once again. Mr. Panetta, will you please read Amendment L013?
L013 to Senate Bill 11 by Senators Field and Hansen. Amend printed bill, page 3, line 12, alphabet period. Add the pharmacist will notify the individual available generic and brand name
Senator
opioid
Fields.
antagonist.
Senator Fields, will you please move Amendment L013? Or Senator Priola?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L013 to Senate Bill 11. Members, this is a good amendment that has been negotiated, improves the bill. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L013. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 11? Senator Priola.
Members, this bill will save lives. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 11. I join my friend, colleague from Jefferson County who has spoken frequently about the struggles that I believe her mother had with substance abuse. I don't talk about this as much. But last year, I received a call notifying me that my sister had passed away from an overdose. My father and my sister struggled their whole lives with substance abuse. Thank you, God, that I don't have that. And to my friend from Jefferson County, I know the pain that substance abuse can bring to a family. I don't know what my sister overdosed on, but they found her the next morning, and her addiction finally took her. When I was asked about Senate Bill 11, that was my first thought. I know that my father and I believe my sister both struggled with opioid addiction. Alcohol was a big part of their lives too. Senate Bill 11 would allow a pharmacist to give advice and to offer a rescue drug. Things like Narcan and Meloxicillin. I'm not an expert. Thank you that I've not been in these situations. I don't know if my sister had had availability to one of those, a nasal spray or something else, if she'd still be here. But I'll be voting for Senate Bill 11 because it gives the opportunity, at least, that people who struggle with those addictions, maybe they haven't struggled before, maybe it would be their first entry, first experience with that. And just like that, they lose their ability to control their lives. These are powerful drugs, and I'm proud to stand with my friend from Aurora and my friend from Adams County. We all know I can vote against your bills. But on this one, I ask for an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for sharing your personal connection to Senate Bill 11, Mr. Minority Leader, and we all extend our condolences. Senator Fields.
Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to thank my good friend and colleague from Douglas County for sharing his story. I had no idea of the impact that opioids has caused in his own personal family. And so thanks for standing on that story and sharing that story with all of us today. Members, this is a simple bill because it's designed to protect the people of Colorado from the fatal effects of an opioid overdose. It's something that can be prevented. Basically, this offer by pharmacists is only for those who are at risk. The average dosage of an opioid is around 40 milligrams, or whatever you might call it. But this is for someone who's prescribed an opioid at 90%. So that is like a high dosage. And it gives them an opportunity to reverse an overdose if someone is experiencing the symptoms as it relates to being overdosing on an opioid. In my county, Arapahoe County, our increase is up as it relates to those who are experiencing overdose. In fact, in Arapahoe County, the increase stands at 293%. And this is from January to June of last year. In the state, it's at 37%. So since we've been in COVID, people are using all kinds of different forms to medicate themselves to deal with the crisis of isolation, depression, loss of wages, the stress of dealing with housing and other kind of realities that they're faced with. You know, an overdose can happen at any time, and it can happen to anyone. It could be a construction worker who got hurt on the job. It could be a nurse who's lifting patient. It could be someone that was jogging and they broke their ankle, and then they find themselves having to use a prescription and having to maybe consume more and more of this prescription at a higher rate where they find themselves addicted. So remember, that's why I'm sponsoring this bill, Senate Bill 11. Basically, it just requires for a pharmacist to offer this antagonist to reverse the potential of an overdose. Current law is you have to self-declare that you want it. And not everyone is willing to raise their hand and say, you know, I'm an addict or I have issues with this drug. Can you provide me with this antagonist? This kind of gives the pharmacist an opportunity to recommend that to a patient, and they can always say, no, thank you. Or they can get that kind of medication that they need to help them in case they find themselves in a fatal effect of a potential overdose. So members, I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 11.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 11. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 11. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 11 is adopted. Mr. Panetta, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over the balance of the general order second reading of bills calendar until tomorrow, April 28th.
The motion is to lay over the balance of the second reading calendar until tomorrow. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Panetta, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole makes these report has had under consideration the following attached bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 94 as amended, 98 as amended, 103 as amended, 126 as amended, 189 as amended, 244, 11 as amended, passed on second reading, order engrossed and placed in the calendar for third reading, final passage. House Bills 1090, 1055 as amended, 1051, 1089, 1160 as amended, passed on second reading, order revised and placed in the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1103 laid over until April 28th, retaining its place in the calendar. Senate Bill 174 laid over until May 3rd and retaining its place in the calendar.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is for the adoption of the committee of the whole report. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 001 to the committee of the whole?
001 to
Mayor
committee.
Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move I move Cal 001. Members,
the amendment,
this is
Senator.
The bill, this is the amendment that dealt with the Conservation Species Trust Fund as part of CWCB. This is a bill that we have funded in the past, but now we struggle, and we need to keep this money available. It's controlled currently by Parks and Wildlife and CWCB and DNR. We need to approve this so that we can continue to deal with those endangered species rather than have the U.S., the feds, shut us down and confiscate water for specific species. Ask for your aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask for a no vote on. Thank you. On Cow 1. This is not an unimportant discussion, and I do appreciate Senator Sonnenberg, the good senator bringing attention to this issue. My understanding is this is an issue that is also not currently being worked on by others in this chamber to see how we can find appropriate funding for this issue. As a broader discussion, just because we're at the mic and talking about this, and some of us have less time at the mic than others in this chamber, this is an issue that the General Assembly does need to wrestle with at some point, of how do we, as funding sources change and with the limits of what the Taxpayer Bill of Rights does to our general fund, and how we look at funding important projects like this as the state changes. This is one of those issues. But I do, while I don't disagree with the senator in the concept of this would be a pretty significant upheaval to Senate Bill 189, and would ask for a no vote on the cow.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Amendment 001. Are there any no votes? Senators Hansen, Hawkins Lewis, Coleman, Zenzinger, Danielson, Winter, Janal, Buckner, Lee, Pedersen, Story, Kolker, Moreno, Bridges, Fields, Gonzalez, Donovan, Rodriguez. The Majority Leader. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Amendment 001 is lost. Will the clerk please read Amendment 002?
002.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Cal Amendment 2. Members, this is the one we talked about water quality. There is a bill coming forward that has $15 million in it for water quality. That isn't enough. With all the wildfires we had last year, it's important that we utilize this money so that we have safe drinking water, we have good quality water that comes from those burn areas. This will help with that. I guarantee you 15 million doesn't go far, but if we put this with the 15 million in the other bill, if that passes, we have a start. I'm asking you for an aye vote. And the interesting thing I want to bring up, if there are other funding sources out there and other people working on this, nobody brought it up when we were talking about during the bill. That would be helpful. So I'm asking you, we have bird in the hand here that we can do something rather than waiting for something to come out of the bush. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, the good senator from Sterling and I have a lot of alignment on the discussions around water and water quality that don't always get the attention I think they deserve. And so I would encourage folks to take a look at actually all the amendments that he proposed today in a thoughtful time, because our time on the floor actually doesn't always allow for the broader conversations that each of these amendments are actually bringing to the forefront. I am confident, though, and I would ask for a no vote on Committee of the Whole Amendment 2, because Senate Bill 240, which we will hopefully have a chance to debate on this floor shortly, will address the exact issues that the senator is bringing to the forefront. Ask for a no vote for the time being, because we will be able to address this issue in the coming weeks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Having no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Amendment 002, the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? Senators Danielson, Zenzinger, Buckner, Winter, Kolker, Huckes Lewis, Coleman, Bridges, Moreno, Janal, Story, Pedersen, Lee, Gonzalez, Fields, the Majority Leader, Hansen, Rodriguez, Donovan. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment 002 is lost. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment 003?
003.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move 003. Members, this is the one that funds our Interbasin Compact Committee and those groups in 10 watersheds. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, the good senator from Sterling might just be a little bit ahead of the rest of us on the floor in bringing attention to a really important issue, and that is, of course, funding the incredible work of our basin roundtables. Our basin roundtables, of course, are the grassroots force behind the Colorado Water Plan and will continue to be. They are largely the reason, I would not say largely, they are the reason that we have a water plan. Our state's efforts fell short when we did not have a citizen-driven effort to establish basin by basin focus of how locals envision the future of their water use. And instead of a top-down, it was a ground-up effort that got us that monumental water plan as the last state in the western portion of the United States to have a water plan in an arid country. So I cannot emphasize how important funding our basin roundtables are, particularly if you look at two remarkable things: a drought map of Colorado right now that shows most of the western slope in various shades of red. You do not want to be a shade of red when you look at a drought map. The other portion that is incredibly salient at this moment is that the Colorado River, as a national river, not as our backyard river, but as a national river, is under extreme pressures right now. Luckily, though, this issue will not go unnoticed, and House Bill 1260 that will come to this floor ideally will do what this amendment is doing. So I do appreciate the good senator from Sterling for bringing attention to all of these issues. They are critical, and hopefully we'll be able to address this amendment in the near term. But today it would upset the work of the board as they have directed, and so I ask for a no vote on Committee of the Whole Amendment 3.
Having no further discussion before the body, the motion is the adoption of Amendment 003 to the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? Senators Hansen, Moreno, Hawkes Lewis, Danielson, Zenzinger, Coleman, Lee, Winter, the Majority Leader, Rodriguez, Gonzalez, Story, Janal, Buckner, Donovan, Pedersen, Kolker, Fields, Bridges. Please add the President. With 15 aye votes, 20 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment 003 is lost. The motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 094 as amended, Senate Bill 098 as amended, Senate Bill 103 as amended, Senate Bill 126 as amended, Senate Bill 189 as amended, Senate Bill 244, Senate Bill 011 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1090, House Bill 1055 as amended, House Bill 1051, House Bill 1099, House Bill 1160 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1103 laid over until 4/28/21 and retaining its place on the calendar, and Senate Bill 174 laid over until 5/3/21 and retaining its place on the calendar. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 18 lay over until May 10th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted, and Senate Joint Resolution 018 will lay over until 5/10/21 and retain its place on the calendar. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 167 and Senate Bill 155 lay over until tomorrow, April 28th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted, and Senate Bill 167 and Senate Bill 155 will lay over until 4/28/21 and retain its place on the calendar. In response to a request from the House for a conference committee on House Bill 1115, the Senate conferees are Senator Janal, Chair, Senator Story, and Senator Priola on the first conference committee on House Bill 1115. Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate State Affairs meeting will be meeting at 2 p.m. at the Old Supreme Court. We do have a change in our calendar. House Bill 1016 will be heard first, And then all other bills will follow in the order in which they appear on the calendar. However, House Bill 1016 will be heard first. I will see you all promptly at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Local Government Committee will meet at 2 p.m. and we are hearing 4 bills. In this order, 1114, House Bill 1151, House Bill 1249, and House Bill 1132. See you at 2.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have some bills and a resolution to read across the desk. You do not need to be here for it. Mr. President, I move that the Senate recess until 1 p.m. today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and the Senate will stand at recess until 1300 hours today.